560 The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Chinese government poses, quote, broad and unrelenting threat to U.S. critical infrastructure, says FBI Director Christopher Wray. Yeah. Okay. Yawn. I'm just tired of it. I mean, especially when I know Christopher Wray and this administration are relatively unserious about the Chinese Communist Party. But Wray uses that sort of those sorts of warnings for very short-term political reasons. Like that was a statement that he made before the FISA surveillance Section 702 was renewed for another 2 years by Congress. The deal that Mike Johnson cut. That included no warrant provision for Americans, despite some 285,000 instances of abuse of 702 by the FBI. So we listened to some dissertation on the Chinese Communist threat. And by this way, I'm not saying that he's wrong about the Chinese Communist Party. I'm just saying that they're unserious. This administration is unserious about it. And now there's been some response to Trump's aggressive protectionist policies in the direction of the Chinese Communist Party from the Biden administration, because it had gone unresponded to for long enough that they saw an opportunity now to pivot and attack Trump for supposedly promoting policies that would weaken the U.S. dollar to reduce our trade deficit with the Chinese Communist Party. And again, with China, vis-a-vis the Chinese Communist Party, the totalitarians in control, President Xi. And again, I'm not a fan of Trump's mercantilist policies, and I think we want a strong dollar. And trade deficits don't matter that very much to me and other free market economists. But again, it's the contrived nature of the pronouncements in the direction of communist China that come from this administration that is the issue as far as I'm concerned. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined again by our friend Gordon Chang. He is the author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War. And you can follow him on Twitter, and should, at Gordon G. Chang, C-H-A-N-G. Gordon G. Chang is his handle on Twitter/X. Gordon Chang, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Dan and Amy.
So with respect to, Ray's general warnings about the Communist Party, I mean, it's nothing new. It's nothing that anybody paying attention doesn't know. And you're closer to it than I am, but I haven't seen any great announcements of new initiatives that are designed to address these threats that Christopher Wray talks about intermittently.
Yes, the timing is suspicious. China has posed a threat to U.S. critical infrastructure, but that's been true for decades. And what we're seeing in the Biden administration are actually some acts that have encouraged bad actors to attack us. So, for instance, if you go back to 2021, the Colonial Pipeline hack, the Biden administration did not oppose the paying of a ransom to the Russian hacking group. And I think that did encourage, and we saw other attacks against infrastructure, which were for the purpose of obtaining ransom. This is just something that the Biden administration isn't serious about. If they were serious, they would be going after this with much more vigor.
What is your assessment of the relative strength of President Xi's position as the dictator of that country? I had a conversation with Stephen Mosher from the Population Research Institute, And he's sort of, I think he's sort of generally in agreement with you that that the Chinese Communist Party is suffering under the weight of the internal contradictions and the impossibility of autocracies being growth oriented, real growth oriented in a sustainable way. And that maybe the Berlin Wall moment in Beijing is not as far off as some think.
Yeah, there were problems inside, and it starts with the economy, which didn't grow 5.3% in the first quarter of this year, as reported, didn't grow 5.2% last year, as reported. We don't know exactly how fast the Chinese economy grew, but if it did, probably no more than 1.5% last year and less in the first quarter. This is a problem because the economy was the motor of China's rise, and the Chinese people are suffering. Right now, they're suffering from not only not having jobs, but their store of value, which is the property sector. 70% of China's wealth is in property. That property sector has been collapsing. Mm-hmm. And so the Chinese people aren't too happy with Xi Jinping right now.
Yeah, but he's still, at least he's perceived to have a stranglehold on the party and thus power. And, I know that can sometimes change in a hurry, but is there any suggestion that, there is a revolt afoot internally or externally?
Dan, we're seeing signs that do not occur in periods of stability. So, for instance, there have been purges both in the Chinese military and in the civilian ranks of the Communist Party, and these are quite unusual. So, for instance, in just one example, in the rocket force, which controls almost all of the country's nuclear weapons, some 70 were disappeared in the last half of last year, according to some reports. We know that it's confirmed that the top two officers were sacked. A deputy commander, we believe, committed suicide in early July. This is just stunning, and we have not seen this except for periods where the party has been at great risk. The Chinese system is very opaque right now, so we have less and less idea what's going on, but we're seeing things that are really very disturbing.
Does it parallel the last days of Mao? But I mean, really, by that I mean Mao's death throes, which ushered in the Cultural Revolution, where he murdered 20 million people. I mean, are we on the cusp of death throes, but death throes that don't have I don't mean that in an immediacy way. Death throes, the decline, but then a period of even more grotesque oppression and killing than has otherwise been attendant to President Xi's reign.
We're seeing signs of purges. We don't know if people have actually been put to death, but we see certainly things that suggest that Xi Jinping is taking pages out of Mao Zedong's playbook. And one of them affects us, and that is that he is creating incidents abroad with regard to Taiwan, more specifically with regard to the Philippines. And this is real, and I think he's doing it to mobilize the Chinese people, and he's doing it to prevent other senior leaders from attacking him. So this is creating all sorts of disturbances in East Asia, which is pushing the world to war.
So the money that was part of that $95 billion foreign aid package that Biden recently signed, the money, the smaller portion of the money going to Taiwan and the Indo-Pacific, is that substantial? How is that received by Beijing? What, if anything else, should we be doing to help Taiwan?
Well, it was welcome, but I don't think it was substantial. We can prevent war across the Taiwan Strait, and it's not so much a question of military balance of power, but it's the President of the United States making it clear to China that we will defend Taiwan. If we do that, there won't be any war. And really what they're looking at is a situation in South Korea where we say we will defend South Korea. We have a tripwire force there that is not adequate to prevent North Korea from taking over South Korea. But the North Koreans don't invade because they don't want to take on the U.S. We could do the same thing in Taiwan, but the president doesn't want to do that, which means that we could very well have war in the Taiwan Strait.
Well, speaking of that huge foreign aid package, part of that was a bill to require TikTok to separate from the Chinese parent company or face a nationwide ban. Now ByteDance has 9 months to sell TikTok. Do you think they're going to do it? And are they
I
spying
don't think
on
they
us?
will. They've been very clear that they said they're not going anywhere. They're going to challenge it on constitutional grounds. I don't think they really have constitutional grounds because we're not trying to regulate content. We're trying to go after conduct, as Senator Marco Rubio says. So we know that the Chinese have used TikTok to steal data from Americans and use it for very malicious purposes in terms of the videos that they send around. So we have every right to disconnect TikTok, but I don't believe that they're going to sell it. They're going to try to fight this to the end.
You know, Trump has talked about 10% across-the-board tariffs and even perhaps more usurious tariffs on particular products or sectors in China. If China is not stable, as you're suggesting, and based on the indications that you were describing, what sorts of policies, economic and political, would you be recommending to this president or a subsequent one to hasten the demise of the Chinese Communist Party's control over that country?
Well, like you, Dan, I'm a free trader, but I do believe we need certainly far more substantial tariffs than we have on China right now, for the simple reason that they've been continuing to steal U.S. intellectual property. And Trump's 2018 tariffs were imposed under Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 to remedy the theft of intellectual property. So we need to do these things, and they are dangerous. But the point is, after 3 decades of misguided China policy, every course of action for us is misguided and dangerous. It's dangerous and risky. And I think that essentially we have got to take some risks right now if we want to save our society.
And are we getting? Are we seeing, and just in terms of trying to read trends, are we seeing the repatriation of U.S. companies or the reorganization of supply lines outside of that included China to friendlier countries in the Pacific Rim, even you play places like Asia, India, but smaller countries too, like Thailand or Vietnam. Is that still ongoing as it started during COVID?
Well, that certainly is ongoing, and we see, for instance, companies moving to Mexico to take advantage of USMCA, the free trade agreement. And some of those companies are actually Chinese, but we saw last year a decoupling of the U.S. and China. So, for instance, China's exports to the U.S. fell more than 20%, merchandise exports, and overall trade fell 16.7%. Our exports to China fell 4.3%. So the decoupling process is occurring. It's not occurring fast enough, but it is necessary to protect our factories from unfair and predatory competition from China. Some of that competition is actually criminal.
What about the substantial spike in Chinese migrants that are, arriving at our southern border and making their way in, like migrants from other countries? Single military-age men. The understanding I have is that nobody leaves China without the Communist Party knowing it. So if these people are leaving, then it's with the assent of President Xi. Now, it doesn't mean that they're all essentially sleeper operators or agents of the Communist Party. Some could be economic migrants, but again, they still have to get the nod to leave. So how should we understand, the tens of thousands of Chinese migrants that have come to this country over the last 12 months?
That's really disturbing. If we go back 2 years, we saw primarily family groups from China coming across our southern border. And those were desperate middle-class Chinese who had given up on their country. What we're seeing now is something like 80 to 85% of the Chinese migrants are, as you described, single males traveling in packs of 5 to 15 without family members of military age. And Border Patrol knows that some of them have links to the Chinese military. We know that China has, for instance, that one secret Chinese biological weapons facility in Reedley, California, that was found last year. It could not have been the only one. We got to worry that these migrants are going to come here and link up with those facilities, spread disease around the U.S., do God knows what else.
So is my understanding what I suggested about how people are able to leave China Is that right, that nobody leaves without approval? So there is knowledge of and some sort of purpose or multiple purposes behind who the Chinese Communist Party is allowing to leave?
Well, the Communist Party knows who is leaving, but they don't need approval. I mean, people are able to leave without the approval of the party. And they can do that by just pretending to be tourists, which some of them actually do. People are escaping. But the party runs a near total surveillance state, so if it wants to, it can stop the flow of people out of the country. So far, it's embarrassed by this, but it hasn't taken extremely coercive steps to stop it because it's still continuing. But you're right. A lot of the people who are coming across our country now into our country from the southern and also the northern border are operatives, and the Biden administration doesn't seem to care very much about it.
Gordon Chang is the author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War. Again, follow him on X at Gordon G. Chang, at Gordon G. C-H-A-N-G, Gordon G. Chang. Gordon Chang, thank you as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Dan and Amy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
Have you saved enough? What are you going to do with Social Security? What will your taxes look like in retirement? Scott Tucker believes retirement planning should be easy, and you should be able to get all the information you need in one place. That's why Scott created the Retirement Decoded Toolkit, a comprehensive resource for your retirement. In it, you'll find a copy of his latest book, Escape Illinois: Should I Stay or Should I Go? This book will provide insight on taxes, Social Security, income, and more. To get your free Retirement Decoded Toolkit, text KIT, K-I-T, to 847-474-3888, or go to retirementdecoded.com. Now, in addition to the book, you'll also receive resources on retirement's most common concerns. Get your Retirement Decoded Toolkit from Scott Tucker right now by texting KIT to 847-474-3888, or go to retirementdecoded.com. Investment advisory products and services made available through AE Wealth Management, LLC. A registered investment advisor, this is a paid placement.
Choosing where to send your kids to school is one of the most important decisions we make as parents. Even as this school year is coming to an end quickly, well, you might be thinking about where to send your kids to school in the fall. You need to know that private school might be an option for you and your family thanks to our friends at Half Price Schools. At halfpriceschools.com, you'll find many different private schools from around Chicagoland offering a full year of tuition at, you guessed it, half the price. You can take advantage of this great opportunity. It's simple. Just find that private school, purchase a tuition voucher, and prepare to send your child off to school this fall. HalfPriceSchools.com has schools all across the Chicagoland area, including